I sold my motorcycle to pay for her college tuition, believing we were building our future together. But when I questioned her late nights, she laughed until the truth came out in court. Before watching the video, please tell us in the comments, which country are you watching from? My name is Ryan Cooper, and I am 34 years old. I believed in love more than logic, in trust more than suspicion. But sometimes, love blinds you so deeply that betrayal feels like waking up from a dream you never wanted to end. When Emily and I met, it felt like the world finally made sense. I was 26, working double shifts as a mechanic, saving every cent to build a life. She was bright, ambitious, and full of dreams about finishing college and starting her career. She told me I was her safe place. I believed her completely. When she got accepted into her university, I promised to help her through it. She cried when I handed her the envelope of savings I'd built over years of sweat. I sold my motorcycle, the one thing I loved most, to cover her tuition. She said I was her hero, and for a long time, I believed I was. Those first few years were good. She studied hard, we made plans, and I never missed a bill. I watched her confidence grow, and I felt proud. I told everyone how lucky I was. When people said, "You're working too hard for her," I laughed. Love, I thought, was about sacrifice. After graduation, she got a good job at a marketing firm. We moved into a small apartment near the city. She talked about promotions and office events, and I supported her just like always. When she said she wanted to focus on her career before starting a family, I agreed. I wanted her to feel free, to chase everything she'd worked for. But slowly, I began to notice the distance. She started staying out later, saying she was networking, bonding with colleagues. Her laughter felt different, louder, sharper, like it didn't belong to me anymore. I told myself it was stress, that success changes people. Still, every time she came home smelling like unfamiliar cologne, a small voice inside me whispered, "Something isn't right." Then one evening, she told me she might have to travel for a training program out of town. She smiled as she said it, but her eyes avoided mine. When I asked how long she'd be gone, she just said, "It depends." I kissed her goodbye that night, but my heart felt heavy. I couldn't explain it. I just knew something between us had shifted forever. I wanted to believe the woman I'd sacrificed everything for would never betray me. I wanted to hold on to that version of her, the one who said I was her reason to keep going. But even as I told myself that, I knew something had already begun to break, and soon I would see just how deep her betrayal ran. After that first business trip, Emily came back different. Her smile looked the same, but it didn't reach her eyes anymore. She hugged me when she walked through the door, but it felt like she was greeting a friend, not a husband. When I asked how the trip went, she laughed lightly and said, "Oh, you wouldn't care about all that boring stuff." But I did care. I cared about every detail. I cared about where she went, who she was with, and why her heart didn't sound like home anymore. She started dressing differently, sharper, more confident. She began buying expensive perfume and clothes that didn't fit her old routine. When I asked if her company was giving her bonuses, she smiled that same hollow smile and said, "Something like that." At first, I convinced myself she was just growing into her new career. I wanted her to be happy. I wanted to believe her success meant our success. But sometimes, love can turn a blind man into a fool. Then came the nights she worked late. She'd call around 10 p.m., laughing softly through the phone, saying, "Don't wait up for me, babe. I'm with the team." Her tone was playful, but there was something underneath it, something distant, something cold. When she came home, she'd head straight to the shower. I could smell the faint trace of cologne mixed with her perfume, a scent that didn't belong to her, and definitely not to me. When I asked if she was tired, she'd roll her eyes and say, "You're so suspicious lately, Ryan. It's embarrassing." Then she'd laugh, that cruel, mocking laugh, the kind that told me I wasn't supposed to question her. The next morning, she'd act normal again, making coffee and asking about my day as if her late nights didn't exist. It was all an act, one I wanted desperately to believe. But her phone was always close, even in the bathroom, even when she slept. She'd keep it face down, locked, guarded like a weapon. One night, she laughed at a text while sitting beside me. I asked what was so funny. She smirked and said, "Just work gossip." I nodded, pretending to believe her. But something inside me cracked. I realized that every laugh was hiding a lie, and every lie was starting to break me from the inside out. I told myself I was overthinking, that love means trusting even when it hurts. But her laughter haunted me. It wasn't the laughter of the woman who once cried in my arms and said she couldn't live without me. It was the sound of someone who knew she could and already had. And that night, for the first time, I began to doubt everything I thought I knew about love. It was a Friday night when everything changed. Emily was in the shower, her phone buzzing endlessly on the counter. Normally, I wouldn't touch it. I respected her privacy. But something in me snapped that night. Maybe it was the late-night calls, the hollow laughter, or the silence that followed every argument. Whatever it was, I reached for her phone. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize, Matt. The preview of the message froze my blood. I miss last night. Can't stop thinking about you. My hands trembled as I opened the thread. There it was, weeks of messages, pictures, and words I could never unsee. She told him things she used to whisper to me. She called him her escape, her secret peace. Every message was a knife, and I was too numb to bleed. She had sent him photos from our house, from our bed, even from the cafe where we'd celebrated our anniversary. It wasn't just betrayal, it was mockery. She wasn't hiding it because she didn't fear being caught. She thought I was too naive to ever find out. When she stepped out of the shower, humming softly, I quickly put her phone back where it was. She smiled at me, wrapped in a towel, completely unaware that I'd just watched our marriage die on her screen. "What's wrong?" she asked. "You look pale." I forced a smile. "Just tired," I said. Inside, my soul was collapsing. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. The rage inside me was boiling, but I needed to think. Emotion could destroy me, but control could destroy her. I went to the kitchen, sat in the dark, and listened to her laugh at something on TV. The same way she laughed when I'd first accused her of lying. That laugh, I realized, wasn't innocent. It was arrogant. Over the next few days, I pretended nothing had changed. I hugged her, kissed her, and asked about her day. But I watched closely now. Every lie became obvious, every excuse predictable. She had no idea that her own messages were already copied to a hidden drive. I backed up everything. Screenshots, call logs, emails. I wanted evidence, not just anger. At night, when she slept peacefully beside me, I'd stare at the ceiling and replay her laughter in my head. The woman who once said she couldn't live without me was now living a double life right under my roof. By the time morning came, I knew what I had to do. The truth wasn't enough. It needed to be seen, heard, and proven. I wasn't going to cry, shout, or beg. I was going to make sure that when her lies fell apart, the whole world would hear the echo. What would you do if someone you loved betrayed you like this? Comment below. After that night, I turned my heartbreak into focus. I stopped searching for comfort and started searching for proof. Emily thought I was still the same trusting husband, quiet, patient, blind. But every time she laughed at her phone, every time she whispered lies into it, I was already 3 steps ahead of her. I bought a small flash drive and copied everything. Messages, photos, call records. I started saving screenshots to an encrypted folder labeled as work invoices. While she planned her next date with Matt, I planned her downfall. My love had turned into precision. Every secret she thought she had, I already owned. I tracked her locations through our shared account. I knew the hotels she used, the nights she stayed out, the excuses she practiced in front of the mirror. I kept a small notebook, times, places, details, every piece of evidence that painted the picture of who she truly was. At work, my coworkers noticed I'd changed. I was quieter, sharper, always focused. They thought I was stressed, but I was simply preparing. I wasn't going to confront her with tears. I was going to end her world with fact. One night, she came home late again, smiling too wide. She kissed my cheek and said, "Don't wait up next time, babe. I hate making you worry." I smiled back and said, "You're right, I won't." She laughed, thinking I'd finally stopped caring. She didn't realize I'd just recorded her saying it. Over the next few weeks, I let her lies grow. The more she hid, the deeper her guilt would cut when the truth came out. She was careless now, too confident. Once, she left her laptop open while making coffee. I slipped a small flash drive into the USB port and copied everything. Every file, every email, every photo she'd thought was safe. What I found made my blood run cold. She had been using our money to fund her trips with him. Flights, dinners, hotels, all paid for by the man she was betraying. It wasn't just infidelity anymore. It was theft dressed as love. That night, I stood in the kitchen staring at her. She was scrolling on her phone, humming softly. She looked up and smiled. "What?" she said playfully. I shook my head. "Nothing. Just thinking how lucky I am." She laughed again. That cruel, empty laugh. The one that had haunted me for months. I smiled back, but my eyes were already on the finish line. By then, I had everything I needed. The messages, the receipts, the recordings, all neatly organized, time-stamped, and verified. I wasn't just the husband she betrayed. I was the storm she never saw coming. She thought my silence meant weakness, but silence was the sound of her downfall being written, one lie at a time. I watched her from the doorway while she joked with her friends. She laughed loudly, the sound bouncing off our empty living room walls. That laugh used to comfort me. Now it tightened something in my chest. I poured a small drink, pretending I was content and oblivious. Friends left, the night ended, and she stumbled to bed smiling. In the morning, her perfume lingered, a trace of someone else's touch. I smiled politely, made coffee, and carried on like nothing mattered. Inside, however, my calm was brittle, ready to break at any moment. I opened my laptop and pulled up a blank divorce form, PDF. Fingers shaking slightly, I typed our full names and the date. My hands steadied with each word, clarity replacing the rage inside. I did not scream. I did not throw plates or shout accusations. Instead, I filled out each section with methodical, cold, careful strokes. Reasons were simple: infidelity, emotional abandonment, and financial betrayal documented. I attached copies of messages, receipts, and recordings I had stored safely. Every file was a nail in the coffin of what she called love. When the final signature line appeared, I paused and considered the cost, not of revenge, of my own peace, dignity, and the life I wanted. I printed the forms, folded them neatly, and slid them into an envelope. Her laughter echoed from upstairs, bright and unaware, as if nothing had happened. I could have left a note, a call, or demanded answers then and there. But I knew her best lies were crafted to fold under public scrutiny. So I drove to the lawyer's office with the envelope in my lap. The receptionist glanced up and smiled, unaware of the storm in my hands. The attorney read the document slowly, eyebrows lifting at each concrete detail. "You gathered everything," he said, his voice low and professionally sympathetic. "Yes," I replied simply, the fatigue in my voice replaced by resolve. We discussed custody, finances, and how to ensure the truth became undeniable. I wanted no spectacle, only a clean, humane severing of what was broken. When the paperwork was filed officially, a mixture of relief and sorrow arrived. Relief crept in like sunrise, gentle and warm across a long, dark night. Sorrow followed, a quiet ache for the future I had once imagined. But I did not regret choosing myself over a life of quiet betrayal. I returned home and watched her move through the apartment with ease. She noticed nothing different in my demeanor, only a softer, colder distance. That evening she laughed at a joke and kissed my cheek absent-mindedly. I returned the gesture with a smile that did not reach my eyes. She mocked my paranoia the next morning, rolling her eyes at my questions. I nodded, answered politely, and refused to give her the reaction she wanted. Her arrogance made her careless, and her carelessness fed the case against her. On a quiet Thursday, the papers arrived at her workplace via certified mail. Her face read shock, then fury, then a desperate scramble for explanations. She called me, voice sharp and panicked, pleading for a private conversation. I listened, calm as a man who had already made his peace. When she demanded why I would do this, I simply said, because I trusted. Nothing I said would fix what she destroyed. Nothing could change what happened. She laughed once more, a brittle sound, then sobbed as the truth closed in. The man she mocked had found strength in silence, strategy, and evidence. I walked away from her that night, not as a wounded victim, but as a choice. I chose freedom, honesty, and a life built on truth rather than empty promises. The courtroom was colder than I expected. The walls seemed to echo every whispered conversation, every sigh of tension. Emily sat across from me, perfectly dressed, her hands trembling as she tried to hide behind the same smile she once used to deceive me. But this time, there was no power in it. Her lawyer spoke first, spinning stories about misunderstandings and emotional distance. I didn't react. I let her lies fill the room like smoke, knowing the truth was waiting right behind her words. My lawyer, calm and collected, stood and slid the evidence folder across the table. "Your Honor," he said, "everything you need to understand this marriage is right here." The judge flipped through the documents. Screenshots of messages, emails, photos. Each one painted a picture of betrayal that couldn't be denied. When the recordings played, the courtroom went silent. Her laughter, that same cruel, mocking laugh that had haunted me for months, filled the speakers. And then came her voice, admitting everything. Her confidence evaporated instantly. I saw her face crumble, the tears starting to fall as she shook her head. "That was taken out of context," she tried to say, her voice breaking. But the judge wasn't moved. Every word was clear. Every lie was already caught on tape. Paul, her so-called friend, sat quietly behind her, pretending to check his phone. When the judge asked about the money transfers, the company card, the vacations, the hotel stays, he stood up and left the room without saying a word. Cowardice had a sound that day. It was the sound of his footsteps, running from the truth. The judge looked back at Emily. "Mrs. Cooper, this is not just infidelity," he said firmly. "This is financial deceit and emotional cruelty." I sat there, silent, while she broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. There was no satisfaction in watching her fall apart. Only closure, the kind that comes when justice finally speaks louder than lies. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't raise my voice. "Your Honor," I said softly, "I gave up everything I had for her education and her dreams. All I ever asked for in return was honesty. I never got that." My words were simple, but I saw the truth settle in the room like a final verdict. The judge ruled in my favor. The divorce was granted, assets divided, debts assigned. She was left with her guilt, her silence, and the man who abandoned her. The moment things got real. As I walked out of the courtroom, I heard her sobbing behind me, a sound that once would have broken me, but not anymore. Outside, the sun hit my face, warm and bright. The war was over. I didn't win through anger. I won through truth. If you were in my place, would you forgive or walk away? Tell me in comments. The day after court felt unreal. I woke up to quiet, no phone buzzing with excuses, no hollow laughter echoing through the house, just silence. But it wasn't the heavy silence of heartbreak anymore. It was peace, the kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. I made coffee and sat by the window, sunlight spilling across the table. The divorce papers were folded neatly beside me. I ran my hand over the final page and exhaled. It was over. No more lies, no more pretending. For the first time, my life was mine again. People think freedom after betrayal feels like victory. It doesn't. It feels strange at first, empty, quiet, uncertain. You wake up expecting pain and realize it's gone. What's left is a space you don't recognize yet. But as days pass, that space starts to fill with something better. Self-respect. Friends called to congratulate me, but I didn't celebrate. I didn't want parties or drinks. I just wanted time. Time to understand how I'd let love turn me into a man who ignored every red flag. Time to forgive myself for believing her laughter meant happiness. It hadn't. It was mockery dressed as affection. In the evenings, I went for long drives with no destination. The open road became therapy. The air tasted different, lighter somehow. I played old songs I hadn't listened to in years, and every lyric hit differently now. They didn't remind me of her. They reminded me of the man I used to be before her. One night, Daniel called, the same coworker who'd warned me months ago. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I smiled for real this time. "Yeah, man, better than okay." He laughed. "Knew you'd come out stronger." He was right. I had spent so long trying to prove I was enough for someone who never deserved me. Now, I didn't need anyone to validate me. I started rebuilding, not just my finances, but my confidence. I picked up extra hours at the garage, saved up again, and bought a used motorcycle. Not as flashy as the one I sold years ago. But when I kicked the engine and felt the rumble beneath me, I felt alive. The wind didn't remind me of loss anymore. It reminded me of freedom. One morning, I got a text from an unknown number. It was her. "I miss you." I stared at it for a moment, then deleted it without replying, because I didn't miss her. I missed who I thought she was, and that woman never really existed. Freedom doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. It tells you that peace isn't revenge, it's release. And as I rode down the highway that day, I realized I wasn't escaping the past anymore. I was finally outrunning it. Months passed, and the scars began to fade. Not from memory, but from meaning. I wasn't angry anymore. The pain that once consumed me had become my teacher. It showed me who I was when everything I loved was taken away. It showed me how to rebuild without needing revenge to feel whole. One afternoon, I was leaving work when I saw her, Emily. She stood across the street, thinner, smaller, her confidence gone. The same woman who once laughed at my suspicion now looked lost in her own silence. For a moment, our eyes met. She tried to smile, but it faltered halfway. She crossed the street and said softly, "Ryan, can we talk?" I nodded, not out of forgiveness, but out of closure. We walked to a cafe nearby, the same one where we used to sit and dream about the future. She stirred her coffee nervously, avoiding my eyes. "I know you probably hate me," she began, "but I want you to know I never meant to hurt you." I almost laughed at that, not out of cruelty, but disbelief. I looked at her and said, "You didn't just hurt me, Emily. You mocked me. You took my love, my sacrifices, and turned them into something to laugh about." Her eyes filled with tears. "I've lost everything," she whispered. "Matt left. My job's gone. I can't even look at myself anymore. For a long time, I said nothing. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to remind her of who she used to be. But another part of me, the part that had survived everything, knew better. You laughed when I doubted you, I said quietly. But tell me, Emily, who's laughing now? Her tears fell freely then. She reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. I wasn't cruel, just done. I don't hate you, I said calmly. I just don't care anymore. That's when I saw it. The moment she realized she had no power left over me. Her face crumbled, not from guilt, but from the weight of her own emptiness. We finished our coffee in silence. When she finally stood to leave, she said, "You really moved on, didn't you?" I nodded. "I had to. You left me no choice." As she walked away, I felt no anger, no triumph, only peace. Because true revenge isn't destruction, it's indifference. It's walking away knowing the person who betrayed you has to live with what they did, while you live free. That night, I rode my motorcycle to the edge of town. The wind was cool, the sky painted with stars. For the first time in years, I smiled without pretending. I had lost everything, and somehow gained myself. This is how my wife betrayed me. Should I forgive or move on? Tell me in comments. If this story reminded you that strength is born from pain, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these real stories reach others who need to hear them.